comes a time in people's life where you want something different, something totally different from what you're used to, and you're just curious, to experience what it's like somewhere else. I have lived in Saudi Arabia and I currently live in the UK. And as someone who now has an experience of both worlds, I can tell you for free what life feels like in those two countries, especially given that the question has been asked, what is life really like? Is it better in Saudi Arabia or is it better in the UK? Now, there's a balance that we actually have to strike to answer this particular question, especially as expats who are curious, to experience what life is like somewhere else. So this video is basically about just throwing more light, making the comparisons, and then leaving it up to you to now make the decision as to which part of the world you would like to move to. So stick around and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and let's get right into it. Some persons asked me what's like moving from maybe the UK to somewhere like Saudi, given that they've already gathered experience here and Saudi has a package that seems very attractive. And coincidentally, one morning I just went on Twitter and I saw someone ask the same question on Twitter. I'm like, okay, wow, this is actually getting very interesting. First and foremost, there is no talking about the country without first of all talking about what makes the people, the way of life of the people, comparing the work life, comparing an opportunity for career growth. So it's actually very important that these are the factors you actually consider when you decide to make this move. But let's talk about tax-free income and the earning potential. For Saudi Arabia, your salary is not taxed. The fact that you work, at the end of the day, what you earn is what you take home. There are no deductions whatsoever made to your salaries. Unlike the UK, the reverse is the case. We know how, your salaries are taxed before you receive them. But in Saudi Arabia, there are no such things like that. Now, when it comes to career progression, I would say that Saudi doesn't, to me, it doesn't really offer that much, honestly speaking. And there are roles, I feel like job roles are limited or restricted to some particular fields, and which can actually be very limiting. But then in UK, of course, there are diverse job roles. People can take on whatever it is that they think they're capable or they are experienced in, and they can do it. So I would say that in UK there is an opportunity for career progression, and I love that. And that was one of the reasons that Saudi didn't really work much for me, because it didn't really afford me that opportunity for career growth. But in the case of the questions I've been asked, these are people who actually have had UK experience and want to move to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I would say the case is different, because you actually come in as an overseas worker, and coming from somewhere like UK, any potential is quite high. Because one thing about Saudi is that once you've garnered experiences, you have experiences in a particular field, Saudi pays you based on your years of experience. And then the beautiful thing about Saudi is that the offer comes with very enticing packages, like housing allowance, comes with travel allowance, which is actually very good. It's a very good offer, quite tempting. But then if you're someone who is looking for a long-term career growth, honestly speaking, UK is the one for you, because UK offers that opportunity, offers career progression, guaranteed employment. The UK offers that. The cost of living in the UK compared to Saudi Arabia, cost of living in the UK is actually very high. Based on my experience of my time in Saudi Arabia, cost of living, it's not as high as it is compared to the UK. But if you're also comparing like places like Riyadh, which is like the capital city of Saudi, comparing those places somewhere like London, it's going to be like relatively high, because those are like the capital cities. So that's that about the cost of living. The next is the healthcare system. For both countries, healthcare is free, and that's a good thing. So the next one, let's talk about culture of the people. I feel like everybody knows this is no news that Saudi Arabia is an Arabic speaking country, and Saudi Arabia thrives in traditions, and for that reason there are actually some expectations, especially if you do not happen to be posted to like the big cities of Saudi Arabia. You may find yourself in the small towns, which is actually not uncommon. It's basically common that you get posted to like the smaller regions of Saudi Arabia, and life there is actually not what it is in the big cities, because life there, people there are like a bit conservative, if I would say the word. So in those kind of places, you would have to dress, wear an abaya and a scarf, which is very compulsory, because in those small towns, I lived in those places and I know what it feels like going out of your house and not having those things on. Yeah, you don't need to necessarily cover your face, but you have to have a headscarf and you actually have to wear an abaya. And that's actually what makes it a bit difficult, because you might not really know where you got posted to until you get there and you realize that it becomes hard for you to cope, especially for someone who's coming from like a place like the UK and you're moving to Saudi Arabia and you find yourself in those small towns. It's kind of hard, really. So, but if you happen to find yourself like in the big cities like Riyadh, Jeddah, Aqaba, the big cities of Saudi, basically, laws in those places are considerably relaxed, but it doesn't really exempt you from, just wearing whatever you want to wear. Because here in the UK, people have liberty here to wear whatever they want to wear, do whatever they want to do. So that's actually one thing about that I actually have to also have in mind. So if you're moving, you actually have to be better prepared, on all fronts. The next one I never fail to talk about is the weather. It's very essential that you know that Saudi Arabia is characterized by arid desert climate and actually makes it really, really hot. In contrast to the UK weather, the next one will be transport. Public transport system is not very dominant in Saudi Arabia, but it's actually growing. When we first came to Saudi Arabia, it was really a struggle when we got to the town that we were posted to. And honestly speaking, as a matter of fact, in that particular town, there are nothing like taxis. It doesn't like, oh, let me get an Uber, let me order a boat or not. There is nothing like that. You actually need to have like your personal car to be able to move around. Also, moving around was kind of hard. But if you go to like the big cities, you get something like Uber drivers, definitely you get taxis. They're everywhere in those big towns. But in the small towns, why I'm saying this is because you don't even know where you're going to find yourself. You might see yourself in the big town and whoops, lucky you. Life is better in those big cities, honestly speaking. So that's actually why I'm making these comparisons, so you actually know what to expect. But here in the UK, of course, the UK has a very good network of train connectivity. There are trains, there are buses, there are, even in the small towns, there are always means, and there's just like a very good connectivity. You don't even necessarily need to get a car if you're not even ready to. But in Saudi, you have to. It's a necessity. So let's talk about social life. So for Saudi Arabia, social life actually revolves around family life, family gathering, and gender segregation. I see Saudi people as laid back people. They don't like to do much. They are about the soft life. They're just people who just love to live quietly, gather with family, go to the malls, shop, and then travel. That is the way of life of the people. There is no public display of affection, especially in those small towns. But in the big cities, I know that holding hands is permitted. I've seen people like walk together holding hands in the big cities, not the small towns. Whereas in the UK, it's actually like an open social mingling, people gathering, doing their stuff. And when it comes to having fun, of course, in the UK, there are clubs, there are pubs, there are places people go to have fun. But in Saudi Arabia, Saudis actually do have fun. They actually do have concerts, they gather together, they invite artists, they play songs, they dance, they go to the malls. So they actually have their way of defining their fun, basically. Next, actually, churches. If you're actually a Christian and you are looking to move to Saudi Arabia, there are actually no churches in Saudi Arabia. There are like no pronounced building here that you will say this is a church building. You're not permitted to publicly practice your religion outside the confines of your home. But in the UK, of course, there are churches, there are numerous churches, and if you're watching because you're planning a move or you're just watching just for the sake of the contrast, I hope that this video actually paints a picture for you. Having said everything that needs to be said, I'll have to say that the scale is set for you to actually weigh your options and decide. So it's basically up to you. I would like to know what you think in the comment section. Let me know your opinion, what you think about these two words, and I'll be waiting to read all your comments. So thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much and bye.